r/AskReddit by Reddit. What's your duck this? I quit. Story. First job, working at a little barbecue place with a drive-thru. My day off. Manager calls me at 8:30 am, 30 minutes before we open, saying she doesn't feel good and needs me to open. I rush in and end up working all day. 5 PM rolls around. Manager comes in with the owner of the business, who she's dating. They were at the fair all day and completely forgot they lied to me about her being sick. I bite my tongue and ask if I can go home. They say no and keep me until close, 9 PM. At 9 PM I took my shirt off, handed them my keys, and said today was my last day as I walked out the door shirtless. Best part, when I got home my dad was annoyed that I quit my job. I told him what they did and said I wasn't making enough money. He looked at my pay stubs and saw they hadn't been paying me overtime the entire time I worked there. He made me go back in and demand my overtime pay. When I came in with the pay stubs, the manager started crying and gave me cash out of the register to cover my overtime and then some. They called me the next day making sure I wasn't going to report them to the BBB. I didn't, but my dad did. The BBB is Yelp for old people. Should have gone to your state's labor board. I was 20 and had been working in a call center for just over a year. I was promoted to an assistant manager with a new compensation structure that was identical to the other assistant manager. Basically you got your wage, a very small percent of the total office revenue, and then 10% of your own revenue from when you worked on the phone. My immediate manager and office supervisor gave me this without confirming it with the regional manager, who was on a 2-month vacation in the DR. When I got my first check, after being promoted there was no bonus. I was told it would be corrected soon. When I got my second check, after being promoted there was no bonus. I was told it would be corrected soon. When I got my third check, after being promoted there was no bonus, and I was told we had to wait for the regional manager to come back and authorize it. I was being paid weekly and worked another 4 weeks under the premise that I would get a lump sum when the regional manager returned. The problem was that I sold significantly more than the other office manager. The back pay had grown to such a large amount that when the regional manager did return he questioned why the office manager had given me this structure as he considered it to be too much money. On my next check there was no lump sum and I was told that they were figuring out a new structure. My following shift I stayed home and got a frantic call from the office manager asking me why I wasn't at work. I told him I couldn't afford to go to work. He said, "Why, can't you afford it?" "Because I have been getting ripped off for 2 months. Call me back when you have my money or don't call me at all." Never did get paid. I worked for Dollar General for 94 days as a store manager. It was explained to me that it was a 5.5 day work week, and if I was fully staffed I could end up making it a normal 5-day work week. The only problem is I fixed my store. Processes were broken when I arrived. Then they asked me to help set up a store. Well, wasn't really asked. I helped with the new store setup, and since they didn't have a store manager lined up I was told I had to run it on top of my normal store. I was then tapped to do another store setup and run a third store. I was working 90 hours a week going between 3 stores, would open one up, go check on another and close the third, because they were all understaffed. 4 days off total in 94 days. I was then sent out of state for a week for training, while still having to run 3 stores from my phone. All through this, I ended up interviewing with a competitor, got the job, and when I got back from training I sent my DM a letter of resignation. My new job is great. I have a small store that is easy to manage, get 2 days off a week. Been there 3 months and already have 2 weeks of vacation. I ended up taking a small hit on salary, but it was worth it. Moral of the story, don't work for DG, it sucks. Worked at a company for 11 years. My boss and I were responsible for generating all state and federal reports. This was for a company that owned several for-profit colleges, so the reporting was crazy complex. I had never missed a deadline, and I had always received glowing reports from auditors, other departments, and even the owners of the company. One particular report was coming due, that it was up in the air if Betsy DeVos would kill it before it was due, which would mean that we wouldn't have to do it. This report required that I grab historical data from all of the schools that were owned and compile it into student profiles. On the chance that she would kill it, my boss gave me no resources to oversee the report creation. What made it worse was that 2 of the schools were using unlicensed non-supported databases to store student data. One of them, I couldn't even try to recreate in SQL, so I was having to do Excel dumps and then import to SQL. What made it worse was that the various departments of these schools decided that they all needed access to the DB tables, and they all started using them for their own purposes. For these 2 schools, I wasn't even in a position to tell you what degree program students were currently enrolled in, or what their courses were, without referencing paper files. Both schools were out of state for where I live. I had 1 to 2 meetings a day to discuss the progress and the methods I was using to compile the data for well over 4 months. I asked for help in every meeting. I was told I would have help. I was told that resources would be made available. It never happened. I started being excluded from the meetings because of my frequent blow-ups about not getting help. I gained about 30 pounds from stress eating, and I started having panic attacks. Finally, I got some FaceTime with the owner and CEO. They asked for details on the project and were shocked when I told them I wouldn't even come close to meeting the current deadline or any extended one. They immediately called up my boss, Greg, and demanded answers. Greg immediately threw me under the bus, saying he didn't know I was so far behind, and he thought I was capable of handling the whole thing by myself because I told him I could. I logged into my work email from my phone and started forwarding emails to both the owner and CEO. I told my boss to duck off in front of everyone and walked out. When I got home, I told my wife about it. She ended up writing my resignation letter for me, and I turned it in that night. Edit. I hope this makes sense. I have been away from there for about a year now, and I still get worked up thinking about the whole thing. Part-time minimum wage job at a Philly cheesesteak restaurant in a strip mall while I was trying to stack cash before a vacation. I cooked for 2 days while Stavros screamed at me for taking too long, using too much meat, and for not letting the steam cook the skin off my arms. He apparently felt no pain and would demonstrate how little scorched human skin hurt him, so naturally I should also have that level of pain tolerance for being burned. I endured this until the 3rd day. He handed me a shovel when I clocked in and told me to clean up the dumpster. It was crawling with maggots to the point where the whole pile of filth laying around the outside of the dumpster just wriggled and crawled like one giant organism. I walked back in and handed him the shovel, told him I wasn't going to do that. He flipped out and yelled a lot, but that was a hard pass for me. Apologized to the other crew working that day and bounced. Duck that noise. I've since wondered how much money it would take before I would have dug in and handled the mess. Maybe $500 in cash under the table? Probably $1,000 before I would do it happily. $5.15/HR in 1998 was not getting it done, though. Edited for correct minimum wage at the time. I was working at Subway in a mall's food court and the manager was a ducking tyrant of a woman. Denise. I will never forget Denise and her angry eyes and her bad breath for as long as I live. I, a teenager, was no match for the many years of experience that Denise had being a miserable person. She was loud, she was mean, she showed no appreciation for anything. My dad had a serious medical issue one time while I was at work, and when my mom called the store to tell me, Denise confronted me in the back room while I was crying and said, "Is he dead?" "No. Prep the tomatoes." "Ah, Denise." Now, I'm in Canada, and Denise was French. She spoke English, but she definitely spoke better French. So, sometimes, she would use a word improperly but not know that she was making a mistake, and then when we wouldn't understand her, she would get mad at us. Mostly on account of her being a raging witch. This is important. It was during a busy rush, and busy rushes in mall food courts are just something else, man. The lines get all mixed up. People are angry. Nobody actually wants to be there. They're just there because they were shopping and got hungry and now they're stuck waiting in a too long line that they never planned on being in the first place. Anyway, I was on bread, which means I was the person who just got the bread ready for the sandwich. Cut it. I think it comes pre-cut now. Put the cheese on it. Move it down the line for the meat slash veggies slash whatever else was being put on it. So, behind me were the ovens and the proofer for the freshly made bread. There was nothing in them, though. Denise, down the line, on cash, yelled, "Hey, you agent nsfw, close the oven." And I looked behind me, confused, because the oven was closed. On, but closed. So I pointed at the door indicating it was closed, and went on to the next customer. Again, "Hey, /you /agent nsfw, I said close the oven." Now, everyone in line is just looking from Denise to me to Denise, and watching her yell at me for something that I was clearly not understanding. I didn't know what to do because the oven was closed already, so I just kinda stood there. Denise throws an absolute ducking fit, stomps her way over to where I am, goes over to the oven and flips the switch off. She wanted me to turn it off, but was using the wrong word and asking me to close it. As she angrily switches it off, she yells, "So, again, everyone can hear, they're closed. Are you stupid?" I feel guilty to this day that I just walked out then and there, mostly just for my coworkers, but it had to be done. "Denise," I said, taking off my plastic gloves and that stupid ducking visor they made us wear, "you're a horrible person, and I hope nothing good happens to you." And I left. Fast forward like 15 years and I worked in a busy cardiologist's clinic. I call in my next patient, and it's Denise. She doesn't recognize me. I'm just another former teenager she terrorized, probably one of many. But I remember her, those eyes and that breath and that general miserableness. I check her chart. Heart disease. Guess nothing good happened to Denise. Thank you for watching Reddit. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more r/AskReddit videos. Share your stories in the comments section below.